Part 1.
Gavin, a newly arrived student, wants to insure the contents of his apartment. He calls an insurance agent to ask for information. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6.
Good morning, Diane Davis. Can I help you?
Yes, I'd like to get some insurance for the contents of my home.
Fine. When did you move into the house?
A couple of weeks ago. And, it's an apartment, actually. I was told by the landlord that it would be a good idea to get some insurance for the furniture and other personal possessions.
Fine. Well, let's get some details. What kind of apartment is it?
It's a 2-bedroom apartment.
Huh? What floor is it on?
Why do you need to know that?
Because it affects the cost of the insurance. An apartment on the ground floor isn't as protected as others, and there's more chance of a break-in.
Really? I didn't know that. It's on the second floor.
Second. And how much is the rent?
It's $615 per month.
Good. And where is it located?
In Biggin Street, South Hills.
I see. And what things did you want to insure?
Well, what do you recommend?
Well, the most important things are those which you would normally find in a home. Things like the television, fridge, and so on.
I see. Well, I've got a fridge and a stereo system, which I've just bought from a friend.
And how much did you pay for the fridge?
$450.
50 or 15?
50. And the stereo system cost $1,150.
Have you got a television?
Yes, but it's very old and not worth much.
Okay. Well, is there anything else you want to insure?
Yes, I've got a couple of watches and my CDs and books.
How much do you think they're worth?
The watches are worth $1,000.
For both of them?
No, each one. And altogether, the CDs and books cost me about $400.
Okay. So, the value of everything you want to insure is $4,000.
How much will the insurance cost?
Let me see. $4,000 divided by plus 10%. Right. So, this kind of insurance, that's private contents insurance, it comes to $184 for a 12-month period.
$184? Well, that sounds pretty good. Okay, I'll take that policy.
Before the conversation continues, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now listen carefully and answer questions 7 to 10.
can I arrange the policy over the phone?
Sure. Just let me get the details down. So, that's Mr.
Gavin Murray. That's M-U-R-R-A-Y.
And the address is?
It's 16C, Biggins Street, South Hills.
Okay. 16C, Biggins Street, South Hills?
That's right. It's 2 words. South Hills.
And your date of birth is?
12th of November, 1980.
And your contact number?
Home phone number is 9872 4855.
Right. And, you're Australian?
No, I was born in London, although my mother is from Tasmania.
Oh, really? Whereabouts?
Hobart.
I see. Interesting place. Now, are you working at the moment?
No, I'm a full-time student at Sydney University.
Right. Good.
That is the end of part 1. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to part 1. Part 2.
You will hear an address by the college president welcoming new students to a residential college. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 14. Now listen carefully to the first part of the talk and answer questions 11 to 14.
Well, good morning everyone. It's good to see you all here. Welcome to Smith House. Smith House, as you may or may not know, is one of the oldest residential colleges of the university. As you can see, the building you're in now, which contains this main lounge, the dining room, the recreation room, the kitchen and the offices, was part of the original old house built in the 1840s to be used by the family of George Smith. That's of course how the house and college got their names. The original house was converted into a residential college for the university in 1940 and since then has continued to be added on to and modernised. You'll notice when you receive your room allocation in a few minutes that your room number either begins with the letter N, S or W, like this one here. The first letter refers to the 3 wings of the college, which come away from this main building. Of course, the letters represent the 3 directions, in this case, north, south and west. Each wing has 2 floors, and so the next number you see is either 1 or in this case 2, and this indicates which floor your room is on. The number after that is your individual room number. So it's quite simple to find any room by going to the right wing, then floor, and then room number.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 15 to 20. Now listen carefully and answer questions 15 to 20.
You'll also notice, when you receive your orientation pack shortly, that there are two keys. One is the key to your room, and only you have that key, and the other is a key to the front door, which you've just come through here from the street. This door is closed and locked at 8 p.m. every night, and opened again at 7 a.m. You'll need your key if you're coming back to the college between those times. We ask all students to always enter and leave the college through the front door. You'll notice at the end of each corridor that there is another door, but these are fire doors and are kept locked from the outside. They should only be opened from the inside in case of emergency. In your fees, you've paid a laundry fee, which covers the cleaning of bed linen and towels. All bed linen and towels are clearly embossed with the name Smith House, so it's easily identifiable. If you want your other laundry to be done by the college, this can be arranged for a small extra fee. There are only a few rules here at Smith House, and we have these rules so that we can all live comfortably together. The most important rule is that there must be no noise after 9 p.m. There is also no smoking in the rooms or anywhere inside the college, but smoking is permitted on the balconies. All meals are served in the dining room. Meal times are listed in your orientation pack. Please read these carefully, as meal times cannot be changed, and if you arrive late, I'm sorry to say, you'll just go hungry. If you're unsure about things, each floor has an elected floor senior, who is usually a student in their 3rd or 4th year of study, who's been at Smith House for a while. The floor seniors will introduce themselves later today and answer any questions you have. But for now, I'm going to hand you over to Marnie, who is going to give you the orientation packs and keys. Thanks, Marnie.
That is the end of part 2. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to part 2. Part 3.
You will hear a conversation between two students, Lynn and Robin, who are discussing an assignment. First, you have some time to look at questions
That essay we have to write, the one on how children learn through the media, how are you planning to write it?
Well, I've given it some thought, and I think that the best way to approach it is to divide the essay into 2 parts. First of all, we'd have to look at some examples of each type of media.
Yes, what they are. Then we could describe how we can use each medium so that children can learn something from each one.
Exactly. Maybe we could draw up a table and look at examples of each medium in turn. Let's see. The different forms of media would be the print media.
Here you'd have things like books and newspapers, that sort of thing.
And included in these are the pictorial forms of print media, like maps.
Yes, maps are really just formal pictures, aren't they? And then there are what we call the audio forms of media, where children can listen. CDs and radios are probably the best examples because a lot of children have access to these, especially radios.
And this would lead into the audio-visual media, which can be seen as well as heard. Film, television, and we mustn't forget videos.
Yes, but there's a final category as well. Computers that make up the so-called electronic media. In the United Kingdom and Australia, they say that 1 in 3 families has a computer now.
Yes, I believe it.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions
Well, that's a good list to start with. We're really getting somewhere with this essay now. So let's move on to when each type of medium could be used. I guess we could start by trying to identify the best situation for each type of media.
What do you mean?
I'm talking about whether each medium should be used with different size groups. For example, we could look at pictures and ask whether they're more useful for an individual child, a few children together, or a full class. In this case, I'd say pictures are best with individual children because they give them an opportunity to let their imaginations run wild.
Yes, I see.
Let's take tapes next. Although tapes look ideal for individual children, I feel they're best suited to small group work. This way, children don't feel isolated because they can get help from their friends. Computers are the same. I think they're better with small numbers of children, and they're hardly ever useful with a whole class. Videos, however, are ideal for use with everyone present in the class, especially when children have individual activity sheets to help them focus their minds on what's in the video.
And what about books? What would you recommend for them? Books are ideal for children to use by themselves. I know they're used with groups in schools, but I wouldn't recommend it. Other pictorial media like maps, though, are different. I'd always plan group work around those. Give the children a chance to interact and to share ideas.
I agree. Teachers often just leave maps on the wall for children to look at when they have some free time. But kids really enjoy using them for problem solving.
Yes. Different people have different ideas, I suppose.
Yeah, and different teachers recommend different tools for different age groups.
That is the end of part 3. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to part 3. Part 4.
You will hear a lecture about the lack of rainfall in Australia. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40.
Good morning. This morning we are continuing our look at Australia and its natural problems. Actually, dryness, or aridity, as it is generally called by geographers, is probably the most challenging of Australia's natural problems. And so it's very important in this course for you to have a good understanding of the subject. For Australia, water is a precious resource, and its wise management is of the greatest importance. As I've said, Australia is a dry continent, second only to Antarctica in its lack of rainfall. Long hours of hot sunshine and searing winds give Australia an extremely high rate of evaporation, far more than in most other countries. It's estimated that approximately 87% of Australia's rainfall is lost through evaporation, compared with just over 60% in Europe and Africa, and 48% in North America. You generally think of Africa as being a very hot and dry place, but it's not, in comparison with Australia. In many parts of Australia, standing water, that is, dams, puddles and so forth, dry up rapidly, and some rainfall barely penetrates the soil. The reason for this is that the moisture is absorbed by thirsty plants. Some parts of Australia are dry because rainwater seeps quickly through sandy soils and into the rock below. In parts of Australia, this water which seeps through the sandy soil, collects underground to form underground lakes. Water from these subterranean lakes can be pumped to the surface and tapped, and so used for various purposes above the ground. In fact, extensive underground water resources are available over more than half of Australia's land area. But most of the water is too salty to be used for human consumption or for the irrigation of crops. However, most inland farmers do rely on this water for watering their animals and, where possible, to a lesser extent, for irrigation. Underground water can flow very large distances and can be kept in underground reservoirs for a very long time. Water from these underground reservoirs bubbles to the surface as springs in some parts of the country, and these rare sources of permanent water were vital to early explorers of inland Australia and to other pioneers last century who used the springs for survival. But in many places, levels have fallen drastically through continuous use over the years. This has necessitated the pumping of the water to the surface. Remarkably, underground water sources in Australia supply about 18% of total water consumption. So you can see it's quite an important source of water in this dry land. So, most of the consumption of water in Australia comes from water which is kept above ground. More than 300 dams regulate river flows around the country. The dams store water for a variety of functions. The rural irrigation of crops, without which many productive areas of the country would not be able to be farmed. The regulation of flooding, a serious problem which will be dealt with later in the course. And last but not least, the harnessing of the force of gravity for the generation of electricity. That is all we have time for this morning, but you'll be able to do further study on this important area in the library. I have a handout here with references on the subject, so if you're interested, please come up to the desk and take a copy. Next week's lecture is a case study of an outback farm, and it'll be going into detail about some of the problems we've discussed here.
That is the end of Part 4. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to Part 4.